The three biggest issues with these E46 M3s are: one, Vanos, which I've already done. I rebuilt the entire top end on this. I took the head off, I rebuilt it. Two is the rod bearings. Later models, not so much. I've still got to do mine. Three is the subframe. And this is exactly what we're starting today. Welcome back to Yev's Builds. If you are new to this channel, dude, I'm just saying, likes and subscribes really are appreciated, and they do some sort of miracle work with the algorithm. And those who have been here since day one, I seriously and truly appreciate every single one of you, and it's awesome. So if you're new, welcome to Yev's Builds. That is a V10 that we are swapping later on into an E46 M3. Not this one, this is my daily driver. The E39 M5 still has a lot of love that it needs to be given. Dude, we're just doing a lot of things. So if you are new and you're interested in this type of stuff, make sure to hit that like and subscribe button. But dude, besides that, let's just get into it. So first thing we're doing is actually going to be removing the exhaust and the driveline and all the shields from underneath, just so we can have enough room to get everything else that's included with the subframe, including the diff and all that and the axles. We're going to remove all that simultaneously. So we're just going to remove everything that's in the way first and foremost. Alright, so as you can see, we are under the car. The drivetrain is off. All the shields are off. This is kind of how it's gonna look like if you're doing this. These e-brake lines, we're gonna have to disconnect them from the inside. And of course, before we start anything with this job, it's always a good idea to disconnect your negative terminal for battery, just in case there's a live wire somewhere. I mean, dude, just disconnect it for safety, okay? So next up, we're gonna go inside the interior. We're gonna remove this cover. All you gotta do is just pop it off. It's just on clips, yep, just like that. And here, you're gonna find two 10mm nuts. You remove these, and that way we prepare to remove the subframe. Nice. That way they will slide out when we're ready. Let's go underneath now. I figured I'm actually gonna be removing my calipers from this setup, so I wouldn't have to bleed the brakes because I bled them not too long ago. I'm replacing my lower control arms anyway to adjustable camber ones. Also, shout out to Turner Motorsport because they hooked me up. Dave, thank you once again. You're coming in clutch. Yeah, we're gonna remove the wheels. There we go. What I'm gonna do is disassemble this shock. It's an 18mm bolt. I'll unscrew that. This lower control arm bolt, also 18mm on this side and 18mm on that side. Disassemble this, that way we can unscrew the actual caliper. Both top and bottom caliper bolts are going to be 16mm. Remove it and tuck it from underneath this lower control arm and tuck it aside, that way I don't have to drain the brake fluid. Where the trailing arm bolts go, those three right there, I drew white little circles all around. Obviously when I put all this back together, it's not going to be exactly perfect, but it'll do the job and we'll get somewhat of an alignment done. So that's done. And then the final piece to remove this caliper out of the way is going to be this little bracket right here. It's going to have a 10mm bolt. Unscrew this and the caliper should move. Put the caliper on top of a little block, that way it doesn't actually stretch the brake line and it's going to be safe and sound like this. So then once you get underneath, you take the 4 mounting points of the subframe, right? 1, 2, 3, and 4. Those are all 18mm bolts. Also, I noticed that underneath right here, there are two 13mm and also underneath there. And then we're gonna be removing the trailing arms. There's 3 18mm bolts on one side and 3 18mm on the other. I think this entire subframe should be able to just drop down, but let's just go for it, dude. It's definitely lowering. If you get down from the passenger side, right, if this is the passenger side, you get down all the way up in here, right over the passenger side axle, there's going to be a sensor. This sensor goes right into here. Looks like it's some sort of leveling sensor, so for the headlights I'm assuming. You gotta unclip it from all these clips. Make sure not to tug too much on this wire, unclip it. And also when you're down over here, make sure to unclip your e-brake cables from these white clips right here and just pull them out from these two spots. Just pull them completely out. When we're gonna put everything back in, we're just gonna fish them all the way through from here and catch them on the other side, on the interior side. So this whole thing should be able to just come off. And there we go. The subframe is off. Let's remove it now. Let's move it completely out of the way. There we got it. Subframe is completely off. So then before we remove the actual gas tank, next step is going to be to remove this passenger side wheel arch cover, right? There's gonna be a couple 10 mils all around, and if you go underneath, this cover right here also has a few 8 mils and a few 10 mils. The shield removes, there's a few 10 mils right here, and a few 8 mils on the back side. We are then gonna be removing this entire gas tank assembly. It looks like there's only a few bolts right here, another one right up in there. There should be some wiring all along the top of this gas tank, but we will cross this bridge when we get to it, all right? It looks like to get this fill neck out, there's gonna be a 10 mil nut right here, a plastic one, a 10 mil nut right there, a plastic one, and then a 10 mil nut over here, but that's gonna be a metal one. And it looks like it's free. So as you can see, there's a fuel pump on this side and a fuel pump on that side, obviously. There's a few sensors we gotta disconnect, and then the rest of those lines look like they just unclip. Hold it with something. I'm using my knees. It's not heavy at all. I got like 5 gallons of gas in here, it's no problem. Yeah, so I'm just gonna try to unclip those and see how that goes. All these blue lines have been unclipped from these white clips. We're gonna have to disconnect this little piece right here, disconnect this connector here. This connector is a little bit more tricky because this plastic shield, you have to pretty much move it forward, right? You move it over, and then you just pull it all off. Disconnect this connector here, and it's right there. It's just you push on 2 sides, and it pops out. We're gonna have to replace this clamp right here. We're gonna have to undo it and pull this hose off. That corner clamp we're gonna have to undo and replace it. This clamp right here we're gonna have to replace, and that clamp right there. And technically this entire thing should just remove after that. The gas tank is fully off. Those clamps were a complete doozy. Just be careful because you don't want to break the nozzles that the clamps are attached to. This filler right here, I didn't remove it all the way. I just detached it from this hose right here, just because this hose is actually also on the same kind of one-time use clamps, and I really don't want to bust this because it's going to be a mission to put it on, so I removed it. I kind of cleaned up the mounting points for the subframe. As you can see, I took a drill and I put this metallic brush, removed most of the grime and most of the dirt. As we can see, there is a little crack forming right there, so good thing we're doing this. That's just something to watch out for. You know, this is nothing at all, but still, I'm glad I'm doing this now and not later. Took some vice grips, gripped up this piece right here, and unscrewed it just because I don't have a wrench this big. You unscrew this side. To my surprise, not many more cracks visible. I could see one right here. There's a very small one right on the edge. This one, of course, that's there. Gonna have to clean it all up a little bit more just to actually see anything else, but my guess is that there's gonna be a little bit more cracks than what I can see currently. And just note that after this job, you will look a little bit more tan. And now we're moving on to the grinding part of this procedure, this entire job. Pretty much what we're doing here is we're prepping the surface area for welding. What I mean by that is we've got to get rid of all the paint, because all this is painted. All this entire undercoating is paint. We got to get it to bare metal. That way the new plates can be welded on. A good way to test this and to know where and how much you got to grind off is you take the plates and you put them up to where they're going to be sitting at. Precisely where the hole is, just kind of eyeball it and kind of make a note. You could draw an outline with a Sharpie or something just to know how much of this entire space you got to grind off. Once everything's grinded and it's down to the bare metal with no sort of linings or anything, it's just perfectly bare metal. That way we are prepared for the welding, and that's going to be another fun part of the job, which I'm not doing, but my friend is. Which leads me to another point. These plates that I found online are the biggest plates for reinforcement that I have found. I'll link them down below. It's a company, I believe, from Russia. I didn't know this until I bought them, but these are literally the biggest reinforcement plates I could find online, which, you know, the bigger the plates are, the more the cover of the surface area, the more reinforcement you technically have, as long as you get it all welded on properly. So shout out to this company. Thank you. I am excited to get these installed and have a safe vehicle at this point. a little side note, when you're doing this entire procedure, kind of keep an eye out on other mounting points. So like where the trailing arm mounts, you see that? There's a crack in there, I believe. Not sure how, but that's definitely not supposed to be there. So we're gonna grind down this area as well and get that all welded up and prepped. So just keep an eye out for various areas like this, somewhere where there's a lot of suspension components, areas like that, or something like this. You see that? I have a crack underneath here. Not sure why, but that's there. We gotta weld that up, and yeah, we're just gonna prepare all this, grind down everything you see that is not right, and we gotta get it grinded down and we'll get to it. Also, while you're doing this job, make sure you're wearing eye protection and ear protection. Cover up your ears, cover up your eyes. You don't want none of these shards and pieces of metal flying anywhere into your face, so stay protected, dude. Let's get on with it. and after some time you may result in something like this, which is completely acceptable in my opinion. Now we're gonna move on, do all 4 corners and some other spots over there, and this should be prepped for welding. Next up, you gotta get into your trunk, and we gotta cut out holes like that. Obviously, before we do any sort of cutting in the trunk, you do not want your battery connected. So to disconnect that thing, make sure nothing that may catch fire is in the way. Get rid of every sort of cloth material and cut it safely. Make sure you have eye protection, ear protection, because it's gonna get loud and it's gonna be a bunch of dust everywhere and metal shards, so be protected at all times. You remove all the panels inside. This kit comes with a few new plates right here. They're pretty much gonna go instead of this right here. So what I did is I put it on there. I drew an outline around the new plates, cut it out with a Dremel tool, something like this with some sort of disc. Cut it off, and then we're gonna get down to one of the 2 sheets that are down in here, the 2 sheets of metal, I mean. So the 2 sheets of metal, we gotta cut it up like this. We got to cut it all around. That way we're going to be re-welding all this up together, kind of to reinforce it one final time. Reinforce all this to the chassis of the bottom side of the vehicle. We're going to weld on new plates onto here instead, and we're going to spray paint it with Rust-Oleum or some sort of rust preventative paint, and that's going to be done for this side. And same goes on the underside of the car, where all the mounting points are for the subframe. If you have a big grinder tool like I did and you just can't reach in certain areas where you have to be welding, so what I did, took that same Dremel tool and kind of did all the little edges all around everywhere where the welder is going to be making welding points, right? That's kind of the whole idea here, is to get rid of as much paint so that the welding material on the metal would actually bond to itself and the paint would not be in the way. Do this entire procedure on all 4 points and everywhere else you see any cracks or something like that, and you move on and you start welding. Yeah, so see the left side, technically that's how much I'm supposed to be cutting out on the inner layer. Unlike the right side that I did, I definitely cut way too far up ahead, but that's fine. We'll reinforce it. We'll weld on some more metal here. It's not the end of the world. If you have somebody who knows how to weld, it's not the end of the world, but technically this is only how much we're supposed to be cutting off. That way the bottom layer, as you can see here, it's going to get welded onto this top layer, and then we're going to cover it up with this plate. After it's done pretty much like this, kind of grind down the area around where you're going to be welding, as well as the new plate area all around over here. Just grind it down, and that way this is going to be fully prepped for welding.